Last year, the turmoil in Syria exacerbated. Increasing numbers of refugees left the country to search for asylum in Europe and found states and people that were unprepared for the demand. At a recent ECFR MENA event in our London offices, experts discussed how the EU should act. Many believe that the decisions amongst the 28 member states prevented collective action.
Of course, we were united at the beginning in 2011, just to go on saying that Bashar should go. But as events unfolded and the crisis increased and the civil war was more or less there on the ground, then it became obvious that we needed to go into maybe more details to understand what we really wanted to do. And this is where we were pretty much divided. And because of that division among ourselves, we didn't do much. And it's a pity, apart from what was essential, and I think this was important, has to be reminded, which was the humanitarian assistance. We have remained one, if not the first, humanitarian provider in terms of humanitarian assistance to Syria. But apart from that, we haven't played a major political role, and it's unfortunate because we could have done so if we had been united. I think that today maybe the big difference is that we're seeing much more eye to eye between all the 28 member states, and therefore there is a little glimmer of hope there for Europe to play a stronger role in the Syrian crisis.
Several EU countries have agreed to undertake military intervention in Syria. The EU's function as a union might be limited to humanitarian efforts.
We can support the UN own assistance in this field, and we can try here and there, if we can, to help at the local stage where you have some local governments that are acceptable, to help them start rebuilding something of an administration, something of an economic life there if possible. But I think the main thrust of our involvement should be on the diplomatic and political side. We can talk with more or less all of the actors in the area. We are not being seen as one-sided. We can talk with Iran, we can talk with Russia. On the other side, we can talk with Saudi Arabia, with Turkey, and many other actors in the region. Think about Egypt, think about the Gulf countries. So I think we can play a role of a mediator, honest broker, that should be much more substantial and significant than it has been today. And through that channels, support the UN initiative and the UN process, and be behind Staffan de Mistura, who is trying to build something. Listen, we all know that this negotiation process that has started is going to be very difficult. It's very fragile. But one interesting point is that at least now, for the time being, we have all the main actors around the negotiating table. We never managed to have that since the beginning of that crisis. And this is where I think EU could play a useful part in trying slowly to bring all these people together, because they are around the table, but they have totally different objectives. Saudi Arabia is looking at Iran, Turkey is looking at the Kurds, Iran is looking at how it can be back into the international community, Russia is thinking about supporting Bashar al-Assad. We all know everybody has something in mind which is quite different from the other partners. Europe, I think, is genuinely committed to bringing back peace and stability in Syria, and this is where we could play a useful role, because I think we are not one-sided. We are somewhat unbiased to a large extent there, and I think this is where we could be useful.